Good morning to Brumfels in the 35 corridor. I'm D. Lee Edwards here, the host of the Real Deal Real Estate Show, and today's special guest is Dr. Judith Thompson, Chief of Medical Staff at Christus Santa Rosa in the Brumfels, and an independent breast and general surgeon in the Brumfels. We will be discussing cancer awareness this month and talk to the listeners about healthy practices, where to keep up with current cancer information if the need arises, and some prevention and observation. But first, it's time for the New Braunfels Title Market Report. Today, we're looking at Hays County, and the market is adjusting to the seasons and higher interest rates. 1,046 homes sold in the last 90 days in Hays County, with 278 in the last 30. Inventory pulled back a hair, but prices are compressing downwards. We're having downward forces that are making things in the fives go down to the fours, and the fours into the threes, and the threes into the twos. So that's good news for buyers. But 8% interest is bad, so it's really going to be a tough time in the market coming up. Now, that is a sign that with this price compression and the trends, we could see interest rates and that superheating that we had cool dramatically. We could see prices dropping as much as $50,000, $60,000 in some categories, and now over $500,000 could see a 20% pullback. Now, the rental market is continuing to rocket rise as Hays now has 406 rentals on the market. That is the largest number ever in Hays County. The sad part of it is 281 of that 406 are over $1,950 a month, and the market really can't follow those kind of rents. Interest rates, the Fed is succeeding in taking the housing market to the edge of the precipice. Yep, interest rates hit 8.03% this morning and could go higher. Add to that, new insurance rates are up 20 to 30%. So you're really getting a double whammy. The consumer's getting squeezed on both sides. Powell and the Fed still may hit us with one more rate hike just to make sure they put that last nail in the coffin. They have to understand that if we ain't building, the economy isn't healthy. Now, you got to be looking at companies too. There are some things going on in the labor market, right? Last month, we had the fewest claims ever. But what they're not seeing is the advance notices in these big companies where they tell their employees they're going to start laying off in 90 days and they're putting severance packages together. So those negative impacts don't show up until it's too late. And just because we were at the lowest rate in a while on unemployment claims, what's happening is there are layoffs, but they're being absorbed in the existing demand. Once that's over, the brakes will start hitting. Now, do you realize that affordability crisis for housing has started to really start to squeeze? How? You got a 5.25% increase in interest rates. So what does that mean? In 2021, you could buy a house at 3% down, so a $300,000 house cost you $1,264 a month. That's principal and interest. That didn't count taxes and insurance. 8% as of today, that same $300,000 house costs you $2,201. Basically, $1,000 more, almost double what you paid 2 years ago. So I've said it all along, since he got elected, Biden is starting to look like he's using Carter economics. Way to go, Jimmy Carter Biden. Now, interest rates took a sharp increase this week, rising from 7.69 to 8.03 just in 7 days. This could help the Fed see some cooling, but it'll take 30 days for them to see whether or not they're not going to hit the button again. 15-year was up to 7.35, and FHA was at 7.44, and VA at 7.46. Ouch. The bond market got toasty with the 91-day T-bill staying level. You had at 5.34%. 2-year was up to 5.22, and the 10-year yields were at 4.91. Housing starts are down, but wait, several reports say, that it's not. But yet they need to look at that as an annual number, not what's happening right now. And that's one of the key things to look at. We'll see what it looks like next month. Cost of commercial projects up. Yes, they are. Commercial processes on review will drop prices sharply. See, commercial businesses are sold by cap rate or internal rate of return or return on investment. If you're borrowing money at 9%, you can't operate on a 5 cap. You're going to have a 10 or 11 cap rate, so there's a spread between a commercial interest rate and your profit line. So many commercial businesses are about to get devalued. I hope the tax department locally is hearing what I'm saying. Tesla showed weakness this week. Ford settled labor strike and the need for a bailout, but Ford may be in trouble economically and may have to ask the government for money because their losses are racking up. Insurance companies are in the red as well. Banks are starting layoffs, and 22% credit card rates are showing up. Ooh, can that have an impact on the holiday season? Well, January anyway, when you start to pay for them. This is looking like quite a correction until it's in your face. I'd hoard a little cash if it was me. Oil rose last week with West Texas Intermediate hitting 88.32 a barrel. Look for pump prices to go up some. Consumer prices rose in September to up 0.4%. Wholesale rose 0.5%. Retail sales rose 0.7%, which means they ignored those two earlier increases. It makes you say, ooh, healthy economy. What are we missing? Oh, the fact that the consumers are spending like the federal government. Let's just spend it, and we'll worry about how we pay for it later. Well, things could change everything if we don't de-escalate Ukraine and Israel, and these heat up worse. You see the internal unrest, international unrest, and powerful leaders like Erdogan and Turkey saying, if you don't fix it, we will. The more people that get involved and the more little wars we have, the closer we get to a big one. And you got countries like Iran, Turkey, India, Pakistan, North Korea, all with access to super weapons. We could see a religious war followed by a war of opportunity from the chaos. So we need to be saving money, rebuilding our oil reserves, replacing our military supplies, and get our act together because, see, Congress is a mess and the presidency too. The U.S. political scene is a bad reality show, and it's affecting the economy and more. Just look at interest rates in the last 9 months. Home sales pull back, inventory price compressing, new starts down, commercial architectural business down, interest rate past 8%. Commercial rates near 10%, oil prices up, consumer prices up, credit card rates up, global tension way up, more countries at war, the federal government's a wreck. Folk, this is one rough week. We've got to get better government officials to pay attention. And U.S. citizens, we need to unify, stop bickering between factions, LGBTQ, BLM, cops, lives matter, blaming religious factions. I don't know, the fact that I don't like redheads or whatever else that just keep coming because we're overly woke. Look, we got to find a heart in common, get together on the same side, and start to unify and lead. Otherwise, no one will let us lead the world. They'll just create chaos, and we'll hope. And we're back on the Real Deal Real Estate Show, and it's time for our special guest segment brought to you by Meyer Heating and Air Conditioning, keeping you comfortable all year long. Our special guest today is Dr. Judith Thompson, the Chief of Medical Staff for Christus Santa Rosa in New Braunfels, and Breast and General Surgeon par excellence in New Braunfels. Good morning.
Good morning, Lee. Thank you for having me.
Now, our topic today is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
That's correct,
So
yeah.
Tell us about what the Awareness Month's about and what does it hope to achieve with the public?
Oh, my goodness. You know, I think that's a question that I'm going to say, what is wanted to be achieved? We want people to be aware of the presence of breast cancer. It's the second most common breast cancer in women, following skin cancer. By being aware, we can check ourselves, we can have our mammograms done, we can find breast cancers at an earlier stage, intervene earlier, and make a bigger difference in people's lives.
Are you seeing more and more people, because of things like this, showing up to get mammograms and learning how to do self-tests or that? Are we still short of really getting all the women here to...
Well, without a doubt, we're short of getting all the women. But any woman who has a yearly meeting with their primary care provider is going to have a recommendation for a mammogram. They should have a clinical breast exam done. That means that whoever their provider is actually doing a physical examination. And I think it is a good idea for women to examine themselves, although, and again, I think that this is unfortunate. We have evidence coming out now that self-breast exam actually doesn't lead to identifying cancers earlier or increasing longevity, but maybe increases a woman's anxiety, because the breast exam is a challenging exam to do. Everybody's breasts are different. Not to take anything away from any other specialty, but I remember being in medical school and the anxiety surrounding all of us learning to do a breast exam. And all of the women that I see in my office, almost, not all of them, but almost all of them say, yes, I check myself, but I don't know what I'm feeling. And so I think what the evidence is showing us at this time is that women who are doing a self-breast exam are coming into their practitioner, be it a physician, MD, DO, nurse practitioner, PA, and saying, I don't know what I feel. And that's just an honest answer. But I cannot discourage anybody from checking their own body, from knowing their body, from identifying when there's been a change. And if you have a question or if you notice a change, then it's time to come in, have a clinical exam, have imaging done, have us gather more information, see what we've got, and where to go from there.
So this kind of proves one of the things that I've been talking about on the radio show occasionally, is that federal government trying to do health care for everything for everybody, really they're not competent yet. And I said that, they ought to start out with baby steps. Federal government pays for annual health exam for all Americans so that they can get in and get the tests they need to at least check that this year we don't find anything. So that would include breast examination, mammograms, that kind of thing to be. What do you think about something of that nature where more people can have access to getting at least health care from a standpoint of being able to get checked out annually?
I do think that there is a role for means testing,
right,
and people who need help, providing help for them based upon means testing. I believe that availability of products and services would benefit from competition in a free market. Not at all in favor of having our federal government provide us anything than what was originally.
They can't manage what they got.
They can't. So I don't want to take anything away from people who need help. But the rest of us, I believe that if we'll come to the market and ask to have our products and services provided to us for fair prices, that we'll do better than asking someone else to do it for us.
So breast cancer, how early should females start to have exams regarding breast cancer or mammograms or tests?
Yeah, let's talk about mammograms. And I'll tell you, it varies. It varies depending upon the source that you go to for the information. So once again, everybody's different. All women have their own individual risk factors. So people who have risk factors that put them at higher risk for breast cancer should begin screening mammogram earlier. For example, those who have strong family history of breast cancer or are identified as carrying a breast cancer gene mutation, they start their imaging at 25 years of age. People who have family members who have breast cancer at a young age, we generally recommend mammography 10 years before that the age of the index individual who had the breast cancer. And other than that, it depends on whether you're seeing a primary care physician or whether you're seeing a gynecologist, whether you're seeing a breast cancer specialist, whether you're seeing somebody who relies on the U.S. Preventive Task Force services. They don't recommend beginning to do screening mammogram until 50 years of age. Most other national medical societies recommend somewhere around 35 or 40.
All right, we're talking with Dr. Judith Thompson, who's Chief of Medical Staff for Christus Santa Rosa, New Braunfels, and is a breast surgeon. And we're back on the Real Deal Real Estate Show, and this segment is brought to you by Bubba's Smoked Meats and Fafty Sauces, and Bubba's Backyard for weekend entertainment. Now, we're talking with Dr. Judith Thompson, who is a breast and general surgeon here in New Braunfels, and we're talking about breast cancer awareness. So, what can individuals do for themselves to maybe not get breast cancer or reduce their chances?
Right. Excellent question. So, the answer goes back to we are what we eat. So, down to diet, choosing healthy foods, fresh foods, foods that aren't processed, meats that aren't embellished with chemicals. There is a question about whether or not soy, that is a big question out there. I'll tell you that the evidence is not strong one way or another, but a reasonable amount of healthy-based soil is not discouraged, but soy supplements are discouraged. So, healthy diet, fresh fruits, vegetables, weight control, absolutely, and exercise. Avoiding the use of tobacco, any type of tobacco. Alcohol, and particularly hard alcohol, liquor, is an independent risk factor. So just know that if you're going to drink, that you're going to be incurring an additional risk for breast cancer. But again, that's the hard liquors. Beer and wine within reason, not a problem.
So basically, it's kind of a biblical reference, nothing into that of excess.
Yeah. And the other thing I like to say is that anybody who will apply these strategies to their life will reduce their risk for other types of cancer as well. So women who are committing to a lifestyle that reduces their risk for breast cancer can engage their family members. They personally will reduce their risk for other types of cancers and get their family members to do the same. It's a project that's worth your time.
Now, it's not ever talked about, well, not never, but rarely is it talked about the fact there have been some cases of men developing breast cancer or growth. Mm-hmm. Do you see that?
We sure do.
And how would men know that they need to see a doctor because something's weird?
Yeah, so the frequency of breast cancer in men is about 1 in every 100 women, so 1 in 100 cancers. We do see them in breast cancer in New Braunfels. I'll tell you, they meet the statistics, but they don't take us by surprise when they come in. And invariably, they come in with a mass in their breast, and they notice an asymmetry from one side to the other. Now, men get masses in their breasts, and men develop gynecomastia, especially as life goes on and our hormone balances change. But the good news about that is you see that on both sides, often associated with tenderness. The mass that is identified in that situation is generally directly beneath the nipple, whereas the breast cancer is generally eccentric from the nipple.
Well, same. So, guys, you need to listen up on that a little bit. It's not outrageous numbers, but it's still enough that, hey, you start to feel something that ain't right, you ought to just have it checked, at least by your GP first, if
That's
nothing
right,
else.
And they do know what to do, and my experience is they'll jump right on it.
Now, are there any new treatments or that are increasing the success in mitigating breast cancer?
So, in the breast oncology world, disclaimer, I am not a breast oncologist, a medical oncologist. So, I do treat early stage breast cancers with endocrine therapy, which is very well known for reducing the likelihood that cancers return, and it improves a person's chances of living the rest of their life, whether it's with or without the breast cancer, but having something else take their lives. But I can tell you that in the medical oncology world, new medications are being churned out all the time that little by little are extending lives, extending disease-free survival, extending quality of life. But in terms of that real long-term survival when people are in the hard battle towards the end, not a whole lot to call on.
Are you seeing some of these influences reduce the number or the need for mastectomy, or is it a part of the cancer as a more active solution in some cases, but also preventative solution for reoccurrence? How does that fit into the play, since that is your specialty?
Right. So let me address the question about mastectomy. Some women in certain situations are offered chemotherapy in advance of surgery to reduce the size of a tumor so that we don't have to perform a mastectomy. So that is one indication for getting chemotherapy prior to surgery. In other cases, women get chemotherapy prior to surgery because we know that that chemotherapy in advance of surgery reduces the likelihood of tumor returning, as well as improves long-term survival. Now, I also follow women who are at high risk for breast cancer, and women who are at high enough risk have the option of taking anti-estrogen therapy. We have a couple of medications to choose from that reduce the amount of estrogen floating around in our bloodstream and known to reduce a person's risk for breast cancer between 40 and 50%. All of those medications have side effects. All of them have risks associated with them. So it's a meaningful conversation to be had generally with a breast specialist if somebody wants to take a medication to reduce their risk for breast cancer.
We're about out of time. What are one or two things you want to leave the listeners with about breast cancer? And then, of course, how can folks get a hold of you if they have more questions?
Sure. The one takeaway I would want people to know is mammogram, mammogram, mammogram. Mammograms find cancers before we can see them or feel them. We find them at a much earlier stage. We're able to intervene, and that intervention has a much bigger positive impact on a person's life than waiting until we can see or feel something. So that would be the number one takeaway. And I do want to encourage people to check themselves, become familiar with themselves, and choose healthy lifestyle choices to help reduce your risk for breast cancer and other types of cancer as well for your family members.
Have a few extra veggies, but not necessarily fried.
Very well said, as usual.
Well, in Texas, we can fry everything.
We were discussing fried butter and fried ice cream in conversation a couple of days ago.
Of course.
Can't imagine.
Because the Texas State Fair, there you are.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
How can folks get a hold of you, Dr. Thompson, if they have more questions about this subject or others?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an old-fashioned girl, and you're welcome to call my office, 830-624-7993. And I'm not going to give you my email address because I don't check my inbox often enough to be honest and truthful to anybody. 830-624-7993. Leave me a message, and I'd be happy to get back to you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Real Deal Real Estate Show.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Now, folks, next week we've got a great session for you. Yeah, we're going to talk politics about all the propositions that really matter to you that are coming up in the November election. Yeah, we're talking about things like the $100,000 homestead exemption. We're talking about VOTRE, which is the voter tax re-evaluation number for the school district, and several other key election items that could reduce your taxes, make your life better, or some of them that might hurt you. We're going to have Casey Lee, who is the governmental liaison for the Four Rivers Association of Realtors and heads of governmental affairs committees around here. So this should be a real interesting topic. Now, for the Real Deal Real Estate Show, you need to listen in every week on KGMB 1420 AM and 103.1 FM for financial information, real estate information, great guest speakers, some ways to save money,